It all started on an ordinary evening, the kind where life feels predictable and safe, until it doesn't. After 3.5 years of marriage, I found myself staring at the undeniable truth. My wife, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, had been hiding something from me. The betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It crept in quietly, unraveling everything we'd built. I didn't confront her. I didn't fight. Instead, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left in silence. I packed my things and disappeared, cutting ties completely. There was no goodbye, no explanation, just an empty house left behind, and with it, the ghost of what could have been. For a year, I thought I was free. Free from the pain, the lies, and the weight of a broken marriage. But freedom doesn't always last. Out of the blue, she found me. My ex-wife, the person I had tried so hard to escape, somehow tracked me down. A mix of emotions hit me. Shock, anger, confusion. Why now? What could she possibly want after all this time? That's when my world was flipped upside down yet again. What she had to say left me speechless. It wasn't just an apology or a plea for forgiveness. It was something far more unexpected. And that's where the real story begins. When she showed up, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no accusations. She just stood there, almost hesitant, as if she wasn't sure I'd even open the door. It had been a year since I'd seen her, yet she looked both familiar and different, like a stranger wearing a face I used to know. My heart raced, but I kept my expression steady. I didn't say a word, just waited for her to speak. "I need to talk to you," she finally said, her voice quieter than I remembered. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't slam the door either. Instead, I leaned against the frame, arms crossed, waiting for her to explain why she was there. She started with the usual, "I know I hurt you." But it wasn't an apology. It was more like an acknowledgement, a way to open the door for what she really wanted to say. Then, she dropped something I didn't see coming. "There's something you don't know about what happened, about why things fell apart." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Part of me wanted to shut her out, to tell her I didn't care anymore. But another part, a quieter, more curious side, was screaming for answers. Why had she gone to such lengths to find me? What was she hiding now that she couldn't before? I didn't invite her in that night, but I also didn't tell her to leave. Instead, I told her to start talking. She hesitated, her eyes darting to the ground as if the weight of her own words might crush her. "I didn't tell you everything," she began, her voice trembling. "What you found out. It's not the whole story." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, after the lies that had already torn us apart, she wanted to add more to the pile? My instinct was to cut her off, to shut the door and move on. But something about her tone, the way her voice cracked with what sounded like genuine regret, kept me frozen. "I never wanted to hurt you," she continued, her words spilling out like she'd been holding them in for months. "But I was scared, and I made mistakes." Scared? That word stuck with me. Scared of what? The more she spoke, the more confusing it became. She wasn't just talking about the affair anymore. There was something else, something bigger lurking beneath the surface. She mentioned people I'd never heard of, situations that didn't seem to add up, and choices she claimed she made to protect me. Protect me from what? The more she talked, the less I understood. It was like trying to piece together a puzzle when half the pieces were missing. Yet, through all the confusion, I couldn't ignore the pit forming in my stomach. Whatever she was about to reveal, it felt like it would change everything I thought I knew. Not just about her, but about our marriage itself. She was pacing now, her hands trembling as she spoke. It's not just about the affair. She stopped, glancing up at me, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. I didn't just hurt you. I hurt myself. But it wasn't just that. Her words hung in the air, like a ticking bomb I was waiting to explode. The longer she hesitated, the more my mind raced, jumping from one possible scenario to another. What was she hiding? Was there more to the affair than I realized? Was someone else involved? I didn't want to lose you, but I thought if I kept this from you, I could keep you safe. I thought you'd leave me anyway. So I thought maybe. Her voice faltered, and she swallowed hard, her face pale. I didn't interrupt this time. My anger had started to simmer into something worse, something darker. What was she trying to say? Why couldn't she just come out and tell me? You need to understand, she added, her voice almost pleading. It was never just about me and him. There were other things happening. Things I couldn't control. The room felt colder. I felt the ground shifting beneath me, as if the whole story I thought I understood was unraveling before my eyes. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. You don't know the whole truth, and if I don't tell you now, you might never understand why I did it. I stared at her, every muscle in my body tensed, waiting for the words that would shatter everything. I stood there, my heart pounding, every nerve on edge. What do you mean, the whole truth? I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. The air between us was thick with tension, and I could almost feel the weight of her secret pressing down on me. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear, but also something else, something that made me question whether I could trust anything she was saying. Her lips trembled as she tried to find the right words, but it was clear she was struggling to make sense of everything herself. I thought if I kept you in the dark, you'd be better off. But now, I realize I only made it worse. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what was to come. I can't undo what happened, but I need you to know why I did it. Everything. Her hands shook, and I could feel my patience wearing thin. I wanted answers, but the uncertainty in her eyes made me question everything. Was this just another lie? Or was she really trying to explain the things that had haunted her for so long? You've got one chance to tell me everything, I said, my voice low. The room felt smaller, the silence deafening. Would this revelation destroy what was left of us? Or was there something even worse waiting to come to light? She took a deep breath, her voice shaking as she finally spoke the words that had been hidden for so long. It wasn't just the affair. It was a lie that started before him, before everything. It's about the reason I pushed you away in the first place. I waited, hardly daring to breathe. I was never truly happy, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But it wasn't because of you. It was because of something I never told you. She paused, eyes flickering with guilt. I was diagnosed with something serious, something that made me believe I was running out of time, and that if I told you, it would break you. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Serious illness? How had I not known? How had she hidden it? I thought if I pushed you away, I could spare you the pain of watching me suffer, she continued, her eyes welling with tears. But in the end, I only hurt you more. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The truth was staggering, but something still felt off. Then she added one final twist, her voice trembling. And the worst part is, I wasn't even sick. The silence that followed was deafening. It felt like the ground had fallen out beneath me. I stood there, completely stunned, trying to process what she had just said. "What do you mean, you weren't sick?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Her eyes avoided mine as she nervously wiped away a tear. "I lied," she whispered. "I made up the illness because I couldn't deal with the pressure, the expectations. I felt trapped. I thought if I had a reason to pull away, you'd understand. But instead, I pushed you into someone else's arms." My mind was spinning, trying to comprehend the layers of deceit, the years of pain that had been built on falsehoods. I had loved her, trusted her. How could she do this to me? Yet, somehow, in the middle of my anger and confusion, I saw the brokenness in her eyes. She wasn't the villain I had imagined all this time. She was just someone who had made choices out of fear and insecurity. "I can't change what happened," she said softly, her voice cracking. "But I wanted you to know the truth. I wanted to apologize for everything." There was no magic moment of forgiveness, no dramatic reunion. Instead, it was just the quiet realization that sometimes people make the wrong choices because they're too scared to face their own truths. As she turned to leave, I couldn't stop myself from asking, "What now?" She looked back at me one last time. "Now, we both have to move on, and I hope you can find peace." And with that, she was gone, leaving me to find my own.